Get ready for this download. It's a doozy. We're going into new stuff. This is something I've never heard. You may never have heard. You're going to hear it today on my channel. Yeah. And what's it about? It's called the conscious ego. And herein is going to be a very intelligent form of our energy field that's going to could possibly confuse you. I got this huge download. I want to share it with you. I'm actually going to write a book about this so that you can understand what it is, because it may be happening to you. Let's go. Welcome to Landria, Onkka on YouTube, here to help you break through those fears and live an amazing life. I wrote my book, Break Through Fear, Your Spiritual Butt Kick. How do things operate? How does the universe work? What are we? What's happening? What's the tipping point? What's the knowing? It's in my book. It's blowing people's minds because it's so expansive and vast, yet cannot possibly answer all of our questions as human beings. We're going to talk about that today because I'm going to talk about the conscious ego. When we think of the ego as unconscious, I'm going to share something that came to me that is so revealing and is going to make so much sense as we go into the next few years and then, of course, way beyond. But we've got 2 very critical years here of the transformation of so many souls and frequencies. Now, first of all, let's start with, I hope you'll support my channel and subscribe. I have been a slow grower, but I still want to speak the words of positivity and empower you and let you know that when you break through fear, all things are possible, because that energy field of which is all things is you. And no matter what you believe when you look in the mirror and whatever limitations we've created, it's still part of the illusion that we get to choose. And this is where people can perform miracles, heal themselves, and do things that everybody else says is crazy. Why? Well, I haven't experienced it, so it must be. Well, that's density speaking. All right, so get ready for this. What is the conscious ego? We think of the ego as being unconscious, and it definitely is. Is it? As I was out there watching my dolphins today on my private beach, I felt the planet. Okay, no, I'm not losing it. Well, you might think I am. If you haven't experienced it, it must be cray-cray, right? That's okay, hear me out. I felt and saw that the earth was actually a living, moving, breathing entity. Now I'm going to go into this in another video, but this is directly related to the conscious ego. I realized she is not a ball of earth or whatever she's made out of, hosting everything. She is the everything. Just like you, the body, these eyelashes that grow out of me are still part of my body. My nose, all the components, my eyeball, everything, my organs are still a part of my body, and I'm not whole. Well, let's just say I'm not completed without it. I'm not functioning as a complete body without it. So when you see the trees and you see the oceans and all these things and animals and us, it's still part of the planet. Just as the parasites are in your body, and without them, we would not function the same. Red cells, white blood cells, red cells are independent, appear to be, are still part of the whole of the body. And without all of these little components, it couldn't function. It would be out of balance. So when things go out of balance, when maybe red blood cells, or I should say white blood cells, take over, it's an infection, but it's actually meant to repair. It's operating to take care of itself. The entire planet is that way. Those trees are not being hosted by her. They're a part of her, just like your eyelashes are growing. In and from her, you, your body is walking around in this open space, right? And she is operating as a planet in open space. There's nothing on her that is separate from her. There is nothing on her that's separate from her. Now, we're going to go into that later and why that's so important. What I received today was that the conscious ego is going to be one of the biggest forces here on the planet to take control, that has created imbalance on her. So the body, people get sick, they get cancer, they get all kinds of diseases, right? When the body is imbalanced, especially when it goes into negativity, certain things take over and everything that's good in us starts to die off. The planet is no different. She functions the same way. So when we go into ego and we're doing things that are destructive to this entity that we are actually she's not hosting us, we are a part of, we destroy her from an energetic field and from a physical field, right? Because obviously we see the material world changes when we go into destructive mode. Now, this is really powerful stuff. I want you to really go into this. So if you really think about what I just said, it could be mind-blowing for you, because the conscious ego is the state, the energy field of those who are the independent, appears to be hosted, but is part of the planet, the whole matrix system here, is wanting to act independently. It believes that it is on a higher frequency. A conscious ego would be defined as, and I don't like to define anything because I don't like labels of any kind, but let's do it for this video. When people walk around saying that they're spiritual and they're still pointing fingers at people that are wrong, they are conscious egos. They're dangerous. They think they're right. They think that other people are wrong, and they think that they are of the higher frequency that is the solution to the planet. Yet they are actually more dangerous than anyone, because they're not recognizing their own detriment to the collective. Okay, let's put this in perspective. A conscious ego is aware of the spiritual world. It's aware that we are one. It's aware that we come from one source. It actually has that information. It is you, the energy field, that goes into a different space, a different, I'd say reality. It's not even a dimension. It's just a different energy field where you have a different belief system, you have a different frequency, and you go into a higher, more spiritual, higher frequency. But you're still so connected into the individual separation that you're using the power of this higher frequency to now control things in the material world that still separates us, and that's dangerous. Dangerous? Ultimately, nothing is. Everything's playing out. Nobody gets left behind, all right? But let's talk about the Matrix game. You want to play the game? We're talking the Matrix game right now. The conscious ego still thinks it's right and that there are dense people that are wrong. It sees enemies, it labels, it will take sides, it will be very dissatisfied with everybody who doesn't operate the way they think they should. In other words, if you aren't a good person, then you're sort of, of the negative energy field that is, let's just say part of I don't want to say enemy, but that which is a threat. There are no threats. There are no threats. If you are separating yourself, if you find fault in others and yourself, if you're still going into that space saying right and wrong and that there's this battle going on, yeah, there's a huge shift, but it doesn't have to be a battle. There is a shift of the higher frequencies are solution makers and change makers. The conscious egos are still fighting for good. They're still blaming lower frequencies. They're still part of the material world and not understanding that none of that is a threat, or actually doesn't even have to be real. Is it real in the material world? Sure, it's playing its role out. But we are looking at it as something that has to be battled as an enemy, a war of good and bad. The conscious ego is just as dangerous as the lower densities who would create wars. Why? Because the conscious ego still would do something like that. But it's in the name of good and Christianity or spirituality or awakening. Are you in the conscious ego? So I was out there and I realized, sitting there watching my dolphins, and I thought, I still have, as do all humans, including Eckhart Tolle, Buddha, all of them, have dissatisfaction. The Dalai Lama has dissatisfaction. What is that? Well, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's still ego. It's conscious ego. When we act upon it and we start to go into blame and we start to go into anxiety and we believe it, then we are in a lower frequency. When you go into a higher frequency, you observe it and you know the conscious ego is so highly intelligent and still attached to the separate material world. It still has attachment to right and wrong, okay? It's powerful because it can, from a super high manifesting intellectual and intelligent level, do some serious damage on behalf of goodness and spirituality. It's the conscious ego. Be careful of that. And so I was standing there and I realized I have some dissatisfaction with certain things. When certain people act, when some people will treat you a certain way and you know it's wrong, they're acting on their ego. Maybe they're threatened by you or jealous of you or whatever it is. We know the answer. They're just coming from their own fear and you know, just separation and trying to hang on to, it's ego. But when we go to dissatisfaction, we allow it to bother us, we're engaged in that game. We're engaged in the game instead of the compassion that says, they're just coming from a dark place. They're coming from density and believing all of this stuff, and their ego's in control. They could possibly be an unconscious ego state. Some of them are conscious ego state. They think they're all that. I'm a spiritual person, and yet, but they're still feeling and acting out as an ego who somehow is threatened. You might have judgment about yourself. You might have thoughts and feelings about what you've done, or you're not doing things right. I got some serious sun coming in here. And that is conscious ego. You know that there's an intelligence that is everything. You know all this stuff, but you're still being controlled by your ego that is naming, labeling, blaming, separatism, separating, judgment, big one. When I realized today, I'm feeling, and it's still a form of judgment. When I feel dissatisfaction over somebody doing something that is blatantly unconscious, and it involves me, that's that's a negative feeling, right? Now, it becomes an issue when it bothers you. Why would that bother anybody, right? When it bothers you, you're giving it credibility, because now you're giving them credit for what they're believing and thinking, and it makes it real. And so you give it power, you actually fuel it. And this is where we have to be very careful. And I realized my dissatisfaction with certain behaviors, I got to watch it. I got to continue to be the observer. And you guys who've taken my course, and any of you who are in Breakthrough Fear, know that one of the most powerful things you can do is be the observer and recognize the conscious ego that knows what's going on, but still gets hooked, right? You get hooked into the scenario and you find yourself, right, wrong, and they shouldn't do this, and it bothers you. You're still in the ego format, but conscious. You're aware of it. You might be aware that you shouldn't feel that way, but don't ever say shouldn't. Just feel that way. And go into observation. Be the observer of it and say, whoa, that ego never goes away. It never goes away. It's part of the human experience. It allows you to really experience the separation. And the labels that go on without participating is enlightenment. You stop participating in it. You become the super observer. I'm going to give you one key word here that you can use. This will really help. Listen. When you have any thoughts, I want you to stop yourself and say, listen. It will get very quiet. It's an opening to the messages and the information you can receive from the consciousness, pure consciousness. Not the conscious ego, but pure consciousness. And the ego steps aside. Now you go into enlightenment. The conscious ego will still be separating label and want to control things. Wrong, right. Conscious ego. Because now the spiritual people, they're supposed to rule the earth. That's no better than unconsciousness ruling, which is what we've been doing this whole time. We have to go into a state of totally letting go and observing and just listen. And when you're taking a walk and you go out into the beautiful nature and you're looking around and you got the thoughts, just stop and say, listen. And listen to the wind and the birds. And maybe you'll get a message, but don't expect it. That's ego controlling again. The conscious ego is going to be very powerful. You're going to see people that will seem and appear to be right. You'll hear fear coming from their mouths. You're going to hear fear and predictions. You're going to hear fear in endings and limitations in the name of spirituality. It's the conscious ego still wanting to control it as a game of spirituality versus density. Are you in it? Watch it. You're going to know, because if you have any dissatisfaction, you'll feel it. But if you want to go into true awakening, you'll observe it. Don't fight it, because it will be there. It's going to continue to, because we live in a very, very challenging world. But I want you to remember that everything you see out there is part of the earth entity that is everything, and we are that also. She's not just hosting us, we are part of her. And so she's counting on us, just like you're counting on your defense mechanisms, your immune systems, to have their own little, let's just say, balance, go back to balance. But it can't do that without you going into that space of allowing that, of going into the letting go. Quit battling anything. Quit doing things that are going to take you into that negative space that's going to create that imbalance. We're going to talk much more about this. The conscious ego. When I heard that, it just made so much sense. And I was listening. And that message is there's no right, wrong, consciousness, unconsciousness. The conscious ego will be in that space that will continue to create, ultimately, conflict, imbalance. We can go into absolute, total consciousness enlightenment and a golden era, no matter what the other choices are. Because when we choose that, we help place her, just like the body. If those white blood cells, come in and get things in check, and the red blood cells get stronger, we go back into balance, and only you can help contribute toward that. You can't blame the illness in the body and just give up. You go into your own balanced existence form, and therefore it becomes stronger, and others will go into, and that's the change makers. Those are the light beings that are choosing to listen and to let go of the ego as the controlling entity, viewing it, the conscious ego, and not acting upon it anymore. That's going to be key. Anybody who has seen these digital explorers is a new way of creating businesses that are planetary conscious, friendly, and we choose only things we're passionate about. Everything revolves around what you're passionate about, what you love, and then we create multiple income streams around it. We're starting to create a new world, a new way of doing business. How are we doing that? We place everyone and everything, and starting with ourselves, first and foremost. And when you do that, people will naturally want to be a part of that. And as long as we have a monetary system, you still have to pay your bills. You can be abundant doing that and help people to make higher choices and love what you're doing and feel good about it. Making a change on this planet. Passion, purpose, and positive impact, and then prosperity. No more judgment about money and evil and them and that, and they're going to do this, and the Arcturians are taking charge of this, and the reptilians are doing this. We know none of that. You know, 90% of the stuff you see on YouTube's made up. Did you know that? Made up. And you could say mine is. I'm asking you, go into your heart and ask yourself what you believe to be true for you. Because fear is not a part of what and who you are. That is part of the conscious ego that will choose those stories. Yeah? And it creates fear. And if it creates fear, it is the lower density of the matrix game, and you get to choose. You get to choose. How do you want to live? How do you want to feel? You know if something is feeling of a higher frequency or not. You know this. So again, I hope you'll subscribe. Breakthrough Fear. I've got all kinds of master classes coming out, including quantum communications. It's not jumping. We're not going to jump. We actually don't talk to our higher self. We actually go into it. You ready to do that? I've got some great stuff coming up. You are whole and perfect, strong and powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. Blessings to you, my friend. Namaste.